Okay. Good morning, everyone. Calling to order Silicon Valley Clean Energy Finance and Administrative Committee meeting to order August 4th, 2025 at 10:07. Before we have roll call, alternate director Ristovas statement.
Yeah, thank you. I'm appearing remotely pursuant to AB 2449, just cause provision, because I'm unable to attend in person due to a contagious illness. But I'm glad to see you all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
I'm sorry, Alternate Director, can you confirm that there was no one in the room with you that is 18 years or over?
Oh, yes, correct. There's no one in the room with me at all, and nobody is over the age of 18. Thanks.
Yeah.
Chair Srinivasan,
Present.
Vice Chair Showalter,
Here.
Alternate Director Mohan,
Here.
and joining us remotely, Alternate Director Misto.
Here.
Thank you. I'll note that Director Scazola is absent and we have quorum.
Thank you. Now public can make comments on matter not listed on the agenda. Is there any public wishing to speak on any?
There are no speakers.
Yeah. Sorry?
There are no speakers.
Okay, thank you. Now we move on to consent calendar. This is for approving the minutes of June 2nd, 2025 Finance and Administrative Committee meeting. And open for public comment. Before that, does any of the committee members have any comments or questions?
No.
Okay, now public comment. Is there anybody wishing to speak on this agenda item?
There are no speakers on this item.
Okay, I close the public comment. Can we have roll call, please?
Maybe mover in a second.
Oh, can we make a motion and second?
So moved. Second.
Okay. May I have roll call, sorry, thank you.
Yes. Chair Srinivasan,
Yes.
Vice Chair Showalter.
Yes.
Alternate Director Mohan.
Yes.
Alternate Director Misto.
Aye.
That motion carries.
Thank you. Now the regular calendar. The next on the agenda item is recommend the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Board of Directors adopt resolution authorizing the Chief Executive Officer to execute power supply contract with California Community Choice Finance Authority and related supporting agreement. Is there a staff report?
Yes, so we sent the staff report and I'll go through the brief presentation. One thing you'll find in this meeting is a lot of the discussions we're going to have today is going to feel like a continuation of what we discussed at the June meeting, and this being one of those items. If you remember at the June meeting, we asked the committee, recommended the board authorize the CEO to engage in the fourth prepay, as well as engage in enabling agreements with the counterparties, the parties who were helping us structure and prepare for the prepay. And as we said at that time, we're going to come back to the committee and then to the board with the final authority to enter into prepay. So now, since that time, we've been negotiating and we have reached a good agreement on the terms and structures of the prepay and the size of the prepay. So now we're coming back to the committee to recommend to the board that the board authorize the terms of the prepayment. So that's what this presentation is about. It will be a lot shorter than the last discussion we had, but where we went into the details of the mechanics of the prepay. But if there are any questions, certainly happy to go into those details as well. So I will just briefly recap what the goal and structure of a prepay is, and then we'll go through those board execution parameters. So now I am on. Actually, somebody else can do this. Yeah. So now I'm going to go through the goals of the prepay. So if you remember, this is one of the advantages we have for being a government entity. We get to access tax-exempt financing, unlike our competitor like PG&E. And this is a means where we can basically take advantage of that tax-exempt status without actually incurring debt. The debt that is the bonds that are issued are non-recourse to us as well as the conduit that we set up, California Community Choice Financing Authority, CCCFA. And basically, if you remember, what we're doing is basically benefiting between the spread between the taxable exempt, most taxable entities, if they were to issue debt, they would be issuing it at a higher rate. So we basically get to benefit from the spread between the taxable debt rate and the tax exempt debt rate. And a reminder that all those professionals you authorized helped us negotiate and structure the prepaid transactions. And the other point I want to emphasize is all of these costs, all of the benefits that I'm going to talk about that come out of prepaid are net of these costs. And none of these are out of pocket from us because they're actually financed out of the bond proceeds itself. So there's minimal risk to us. Should anything happen to the prepaid structure in the future, basically we don't incur any more additional risk. We go back to existing business, which means the power purchase agreements we basically partially assign into this prepay will come back to us in the original terms. Now, one reminder or clarification, you probably saw that in the staff report, is when we asked for the authority last time to execute the prepay with the counterparties, one of the fees we asked for was rating agency fee of about $321,500. We had to use an explicit entity called Moody's, and that's because Moody's generally is the rating agency that basically has been rating all of our prior prepays. But now under the SPV structure, it's not exclusive to Moody's. There may be other credit rating agencies that may come in. So basically in the staff report, we're clarifying that the same dollar amount, but rather than tying it specifically to Moody's, we've changed it to credit rating agencies. So that's one clarification I wanted to make. And then on slide 4 now, so these are the terms of the authorization that we are asking the committee recommend the board and the board to approve, which is that we will not exceed issuance of bonds or CCCFA basically on our behalf. We will not issue bonds that exceed in par value of 1.25 billion. This is pretty much in line with the sizes we have gone with or authority we have sought in the past. We may not come up to this level, but this is the level that we ask for, slightly higher than what we may transact at, just in case the market is good and we have the opportunity to capture more savings. So we ask for a slightly higher limit. Again, the bonds issued by CCCFA are not guaranteed obligations of SVCE, as I said earlier. And then we're specifying a minimum threshold savings. Unless we receive 8% during the initial term of the bonds, we will not execute, and we will come back to the board. And remember, what I mean by initial term is these are 30-year bonds, right? But we basically, to get the best savings, sometimes we do reset period. Basically refinance the bond in 5 to 10-year periods. And that's what we mean by that. And basically with this will be our 4th prepay, and we expect it to cover somewhere around 51% of our load. The more load we cover through prepays, the more additional savings we get. These are basically, as I said, very little risk to us, no risk to us, and extra savings in our power procurement portfolio. That's actually the highlight of what we're asking the board. The next step is we will ask the same authority of the board at the August 13th meeting. Once we get the board authority, we will go to the CCCFA board, and they have actually scheduled a special regular meeting for us, a regular meeting earlier in the month than they normally would have had a meeting to facilitate our prepay transaction. So they will be meeting on the 14th, so that then we can basically go to market right after we get the CCCFA board authority. Now, when we go to the market actually will depend on the market. If the savings are there, we may act immediately. If not, we will wait until we get those savings. We We should be in position based on what we're seeing in the market sometime between August and September that we'll be able to execute. Okay, so on slide 6. Sorry. Sorry, Lily.
Will read all these things.
So this is actually I'm not going to read this, but this is the recommendation that we're asking. Basically, the board authorize all the parameters that are the main parameters that I listed there. In total, there are 7 parameters for execution. We're asking for some flexibility because once we actually get the authority, sometimes there are some minor clarifying questions that it doesn't clarifying modifications we make to the contracts that doesn't really affect the economics of the contracts. So we ask for that flexibility. Yeah. Any questions? This is the committee's recommendation to the board, and these will be execution parameters that the board will authorize, under which we will then pursue our board prepay.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee members? Yeah, okay.
I'm not sure I understood this right. We approved Moody's to go ahead with the credit ratings, and now is that what you're changing?
No. So we had authorized a bunch of parties that we need to work with us. One being PFM, who's on the line, actually the financial advisor, the bond counsel, tax counsel, and the other is the Moody's credit rating agency. One thing to clarify that we talked about last time is all of these, except for the Moody's fees, are contingent on the execution. If the deal doesn't materialize, we do not incur those costs. Moody's is our credit rating agency fee is once we initiate, we will incur those costs. And Morgan Stanley, the underwriter for these transactions, has actually agreed that if the transaction fails, they will split the credit rating agency fee with us. But what we had asked at the last time, we were very explicit rather than saying credit rating agencies, we were very explicit. We said Moody's. We're just clarifying that it'd be any credit rating agency. For example, it could be S&P. And the reason we were explicit in Moody's because all our prior transactions were done with Moody's. And now a lot of the other credit rating agencies have stepped up into prepay. When we go into an SPV structure, remember we talked about it last time, rather than Morgan Stanley being the only one who would be the funding recipient. That's their tax rate, their debt rate that we compare against the tax-exempt debt rate that drives the savings. So instead of just being Moody's, we can open it to any parties out there. And then we will basically select the party where we get the best spread from. Under that structure, a lot of these other funding recipients work with other credit rating agencies like S&P. So we're just clarifying, rather than just being Moody's, it's any credit rating agency that would basically provide a credit rating for the prepay bonds. It's for the same dollar amount.
So the same agreement applies to
Yes.
whether it's Moody's or some other.
Or some other S&P.
And Morgan
most
Stanley is
likely.
okay with that.
Yeah. Absolutely. It'd be more driven by the funding recipient, which may not be Morgan Stanley this time. It could be, but may not be.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next is Shravan.
I just want to go back to what we're using the money from these bonds to buy. Using it, I understand we're using it to buy power. Are we also using it to invest? Or what are we using it for?
It's basically savings. The dollars are fungible, right? So once you have savings, but if essentially in our accounting, we lower the cost of our power procurement purchases at that amount.
Right.
But essentially it's money, right? Less money, more money coming into the company, which effectively does mean we're able to fund programs, we're able to fund customer discounts, we're able to put money into our
So it's our
investments.
whole range of operations.
Yeah.
Okay, the reason I ask that is because typically, in government, we issue a bond for a specific purpose, like to raise money for a new building and that's not what this is. This is for our general operation.
No, it's very specific to actually that regard, it's very specific to power purchases.
To power purchase. Okay, then that's what I want to know. It's for power purchase. Thank you.
Okay. Any other question? I have a question. The spread is the tax exempt we get and then the other
Taxable.
taxable. Is that 8% spread or more than 8% or how much is the
So
tax
that-
exempt?
That really depends on the market. We don't really know upfront until we go to the market and test it out. But we're saying we're putting a minimum, 8% is basically the savings relative to our forward curve that we will establish for the cost of power. We're saying basically in the cost of power, we want to get at least 8% savings. Right? So, but that savings will come from that spread. And we won't know that spread until we go to market.
Okay. So if the bond is issued, if the bond return is say 10%, we pay 2%, right? Because we have to cover 8% minimum.
Well, again, 8% is not tied to the debt rate. It will be tied to the debt rate, but it comes up with $1 per megawatt hour number we need to achieve for the cost of the power,
Oh, okay. I see.
which will then come from that spread funding.
Okay. And then in your slide 4, you said bond issued by CCCFA are not guaranteed obligations of SVCE. What does that mean?
Yeah, so if anything happens and the bondholders want their money or the structure falls apart and the funding recipient has to return the money, it's not our bonds. It will not show on our balance sheet.
Okay.
It won't even show on CCCFAs. There'll be footnotes on our balance sheet that we have the structure, but these are what's called non-recourse bonds. In other words, all the cash flows, this is a financially structured product, right? We went through some of the mechanics last time in details. They're secured by the cash flows of that transaction, right? Primarily source of funding again being that spread between those two rates we talked about.
Mhm.
And then all the cash flows that go into basically secure the obligations for these bonds. So it's not on us. They cannot come to us.
Got it. So till we draw from this bond, we are not obligated to pay anything.
We're not obligated to pay anything now or in the future. We just get a savings. Basically, we will pass our power purchase contract through this mechanism that we went through last time.
Okay.
And instead of, let's say, paying $10, we'll pay something less.
Yeah.
Okay. $40, we may pay $10.
Right, exactly. Yes, the 8% difference minimum. Okay, those are my questions. Any other questions?
One quick
Yeah.
follow-up. So this 8%, you're saying that the initial term should be at least 8%, otherwise what, we pull out if it's 7%?
If we cannot achieve that level of savings, we will come back to the board and to the committee and say, should we go for a lower number or should we wait until market improves better?
And at which point will you know?
Well, we will, so our financial advisor who's on the phone will be will be monitoring the market. The underwriters, Morgan Stanley, will be monitoring the markets. They will be giving us updates, hey, and once they feel the market is there, they usually will tell us, this is a good timing, let's go for it. We think we can achieve minimum. Usually in the past, we've been able to achieve much more than the minimum that we brought. And authority.
Conservative number.
Yeah, we try to put something on the conservative side because again, any savings is savings. It's better than zero, right? So that's why. But at the same time, it's the opportunity cost. Once we lock these volumes for that period of term, we won't be able to secure with another prepay. So we put a minimum there for 8%. If we can't achieve it, come back and with another set of recommendation.
8% of 1.25 billion is a big number.
Yeah, it's not, yeah, again, yeah. I would, it's not 1.25 billion.
Right, up
it's-
to.
Yeah.
And then, so the market, sorry, I follow up to.
It's a 30-year
That-
term, 1.25 billion is a 30-year bond obligation.
So if the interest rate, bond market is going up, then it's a favorable to offer this. bond.
Generally, yes. What is driven by, again, is the spread between the two rates, the muni rate, the taxable debt rate. So it's a spread that drives the economics, but generally, we find that when rates are higher, savings have been generally higher, but not guaranteed, right? Because something could happen in the muni market. Uncertainty, people may not be transacting, so things can happen, but what really drives the savings again is the spread.
Okay. There aren't any more questions, I'll open for public comments.
There are no speakers for this item.
In that case, we'll close public comment and then bring back to the committee for any clarification or motion. Any other motions? There are no clarifications or questions.
I move that recommend that we adopt a resolution authorizing the CEO to execute the power supply contract with the California Community Choice Financing Authority and all these other documents. Do I have to read it in or is?
Or can you just say
We just
committee
say,
recommendation
all
or?
the parameters listed on the.
On the motion, yes. That's
Yes.
adequate. Okay. I'll proceed to roll call.
Okay,
Second.
yes,
Yes.
second.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Vice Chair Showalter. Okay, roll call vote. Chair Srinivasan.
Yes.
Vice Chair Showalter.
Yes.
Alternate Director Mahan.
Yes.
Alternate Director Rista.
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carries.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, next on the agenda item, recommend the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Board of Directors approve the fiscal year 2025-2026 proposed operating budget and maintain current financial reserves target and policy. Is there a staff?
Item number
Things
3.
we.
Oh, sorry, I missed the thing. Sorry, I missed that. Okay, sorry. Item 3, 2025 customer bill credit status update. Did I start?
I was going to go home early. Thanks so much. So my name is Peyton Parks. I've not addressed this committee before. I'm the Energy Services Manager here. So typically I work with our large commercial customers on pricing and products and also operationally help to ensure that the bills customers go out on a regular basis accurately. And so this update item is informational today, and it's coming out of a discussion that's began in the spring in this room with this group. And it's how do we address a way for SVCE to reinvest some of its surpluses back into the community. So in particular, there's about $33 million that we're talking about today that we plan on distributing out to our customer base in the forms of bill credits. So we're going to talk a little bit of background about that credit itself, a little bit about how we're doing it, and then making sure, of course, the customers know that this is happening.
Yeah.
When it arrives on their
Yeah,
bill,
yeah,
we
exactly.
want to make sure that they understand SVCE is doing the right thing by them. And we'll take a look at the timeline, at how these things are going out. So to begin, the way that we've determined what these bill credits are going to look like for customers is to take a look at usage and customer costs through 2025 and essentially treat these bill credits as if customers were receiving a 10% discount throughout the course of the year. Now, SVCE's rates are set at a 4% discount in 2025 to PG&E. So the credits that are going to go out on customers' bills are equivalent to about an additional 6% savings. Now, we plan to issue these to all active customers that are enrolled with SVCE in the month of August when we pull these credits and usages. The way that we're going to treat residential versus non-residential in this case is a little bit different. We plan to have all of our 250 or so thousand residential customers receive the same flat bill credit. So we'll be looking at them as one entire group or customer class, and then splitting their share of the 33-ish million evenly. Whereas non-residential customers are going to be treated based on what their usage is. In other words, the credit is going to be scaled to their customer class, small, medium, large commercial, and we'll get into that a little bit. And then again to their usage. The reason for this is that we see a lot of variation in these non-residential customer classes. So even within the same rate grouping, you may have a customer that uses significantly less or significantly more. And in these cases, that taking the average of that class may not be appropriate for every customer. So in the spirit of fairness, we're going to look at all 35,000 of those customers individually and calculate an individual credit for them. So when we consider a 6% additional discount, that calculates out to roughly $33 million. And this group has approved an additional $2 million contingency. This is in place particularly because our enrollment numbers are constantly in flux. So we may have 250,000 residential customers one month and 253,000 the next month. So we built in a little bit of wiggle room here to account for that. And we plan to get these credits out to customer bills in the month of September. And this was in a way strategic because September tends to be the bill that they receive with August usage, which is one of the hottest months of the year, which is also probably the month where customers would like to see a little bit of relief on their bill. It's also directly preceding the month of October where PG&E sends out the California climate credit to all customers. So in this way, customers will actually be getting a twofer right in the middle of the peak of the summer. So a credit from SVCE in September, a credit from PG&E in October, so that hopefully they're feeling a little bit of relief in their bill sizes throughout those couple of months. Now, we mentioned that the non-residential credits will be determined based on their usage. So what we'll be looking at is the trailing 12 months of these customers' usage and then building up a credit based on that. So in other words, if customers only have 9 months worth of usage for the qualifying period, which would be the trailing 12 months, that's the credit that they will receive. Now we have we have some customers that are on special pricing agreements or arrangements with the SVCE. Those customers are all in the residential or the non-residential side of business, and they'll not be considered for the calculation of these credits, and that's per their agreements with SVCE. Go back. So a quick table here, just to tell a little bit about how we plan on determining what these credits are looking like. So across the top row, for residential, we understand that their load is roughly a third, slightly higher than 33%. And so the total share that group is going to be divvying up is roughly $11 million. Currently, we have about 253,000 customers. And so the average residential credit, what we plan to have that flat credit looking like, is roughly $43 and change. Now we could talk about whether we plan to have that credit look like a round number, if we want it to be exact, as it appears here, $43.47 is very specific.
Doesn't roll up your dime, does it?
But whatever it is that we determine, it can be done through our billing partners. On the bottom row there, we have groupings broken out into various non-residential customer classes. We broke them out in this way because they tend to share similar load profiles, but within those groupings, the amount of load that they actually consume throughout the year can vary significantly. But ultimately, they're being charged rates that contribute roughly in the same way to our bottom line. And so those groupings are small, medium, and large commercial customers. The IND is for industrial customers. And then there's agriculture and street lighting. Now, based on those customers' profiles and their contributions to our bottom line, we'll determine what a 10% savings for those classes would have looked like. Take the differential between the 10% and the 4%, and then distribute it evenly on a savings per kilowatt hour basis. Okay. Now, here's the important part. We do want to make sure that customers know that SVCE is doing this. So we have a press release planned to go out right in the beginning of September, so that this will be picked up by local outlets and presumably broadcast on our behalf, so that it's out there in the media. But we're also sending individualized letters. Now, this will go to every residential customer on file, and it will go to at least one instance of all non-residential customers. As you can imagine, the commercial folks may have several accounts with hundreds of meters depending on the size of their operation. So we'll be making sure that this letter arrives to the same place that the bill also arrives to. In terms of a timeline, I prepared these slides for a slightly different committee. It says that we're currently in progress in July. The good news is that we've made it through some testing of this methodology, and it appears that it works just fine. Now that we've moved forward 1 month into August, we're going to be taking that same methodology, pulling the trailing 12 months usage that we need, applying that methodology so that we know the final credits, and then working with our billing partners to get these credits applied to bills so that they're ready to go out in September.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee?
Yeah, I'm a little concerned with the letter things, because I think there are a lot of people who do not open letters. So I was wondering kind of how you considered that. I mean, I can see for commercial customers, the information you have to share with them might be more complicated, but for residential ones, I think we should put together a really pretty postcard. I mean, I don't know what other people think, but I'm just suggesting that from my experience on the campaign trail, you know, getting people, what we've learned about getting people to look at stuff. And I know also envelopes that come, we all get a lot of envelopes that we're not sure where they're from, and a lot of them get, you know, recycled immediately. So I wanted to have a discussion about where you got that letter idea, and if do you have any research about how people are going to respond to it?
Point well taken. I think that the letter was important because we felt like we had a lot of information to share. It probably is possible to get all of that information into a postcard format. The other thing that's beneficial about the letter is that it can pretty much double as a formatted email. So of our 253,000 residential folks that we have about, I think, 85% of emails for those folks as well. And as you know, those cost nothing to send. and double our chances. So I think what we can probably do is take back the postcard idea. We are running up against a deadline where we'll need some of these things to be, printed, processed, and begin the process of sending them out. And I don't personally have a good sense of the timelines and lead times for getting something like that orchestrated for 250,000 customers.
Well, I would say based on my experience doing campaigning, that you can get some printed in a couple of days. And if you have a little more time, you get a better price. But it's not a particularly long thing, and you don't have to pay first class. The postage is, a little less usually. Or I don't know, maybe we want this to be first class. But we have so many really lovely infographics and colored, exciting color outreach stuff. And I just think that does catch people's eyes.
Yeah, I think you've flagged some good concerns and considerations. I think it's, as Peyton said, it's a balance. And as you said, it's a balance of what's the content that we're trying to get across, what's the open rate, all these other things. So that I know that the Marcon team is thinking about that for this letter as well.
Right, yeah.
This is going out around the same time as the Power Content label will be going out, which is a postcard. And so we're planning to try to flag this as well on there. So we're looking at a lot of different channels. How do we get the word out? But we'll definitely take this back as well.
Yeah, just, think about it. I just think the color stuff makes a big difference to people. It's like we're all children.
Yeah.
We want the pretty picture books. And then the other thing I was gonna go back to is, on your first slide, you have a picture of our bill, right?
Mhm.
You have a picture of our bill here.
That's right.
And is there gonna be a line that says credit from SV? So it's not on here, but.
It's not. So this is the title page of the bill, and I used it mostly just as a graphic because everybody recognizes the
Yeah.
whole bill. All residential customers have an individual SVCE page. And so within the subtext of that page in the detail of charges, it will read that this is the 2025 SVCE credit. However, we determined what words meant that, but it will be called out on the bill.
Oh, well, that's good. And I would just say that, the most prominent place for it is on the first page. And if we can get PG&E to put it on the first page, I think that'd be fabulous, but I don't know.
I wish that we could. I think that over the years, we've had a lot of first
Yeah, that's what I've
page
heard.
type of news
That's-
that we'd like to get on there.
And it didn't work.
It does not work.
Yeah,
I'm
but
afraid
anyway,
it doesn't.
because I know, since I've been on this board, I've been looking for the SVCE information.
Yep.
And you do kind of have to look for it, and everybody doesn't do that, so.
Yep.
Okay, well, anyway, this is great.
Of course, thank you.
Thank you. Alternate Director Vista.
Thank you. I have one question about the letter. Is it going out separately or will it be bundled with the bill?
This will be separate, so a separate mailing from the bill.
Okay, then I can definitely see Director Showalter's point that people, I have a tendency if something doesn't look like a bill, it goes straight into the recycling bin. I just get so much mail that I don't read most of it. And so I would be concerned people wouldn't see it. If it's difficult to get the postcard out, then I think with the other item you said coming out, if there's either a pointer to it or a QR code or something so that when people look at that, it's got the nice color graphics and, direct them to a website, or it's like, you got a credit on your last bill or something like that, where they can pick up the explanation somewhere else. But I'll have to tell you honestly, if I get an envelope and it doesn't say that it's a bill, I might glance at it for a second. It's going right in the recycling bin.
Point well taken. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other question? If not, I have a couple of related questions. We talked about the front page issue. In fact, I was thinking maybe boldface, red line, draw the attention. They are getting credit, but looks like that's an issue with PG&E.
Correct.
And the next is, I'm also, you mentioned about 85% email addresses. we have,
Mhm.
which is very, very good because emails do not cost anyone.
Of course.
I also agree with alternate director Restow, that is any mail should have a QR code which points to the web page as such. And then I would also suggest a social media. Basically, we are saying, hey, here is the good news, we are giving you money, right? Put it in addition to the PR press release and then any social media, those will be very, very good.
Awesome.
Okay. If no other question, I open for public comment on this particular item. Is there anybody?
No speakers on this
Okay,
item.
we close public comment. There is nothing to vote for this. This is information only. Thank you very much. Oh, one question.
Yeah, the other thing about your social media, you're right on about the social media. People love social media. I don't look at it that much, but I know a lot of people do. And the other thing people love now is videos. So, you know, a short social media video about this that's catchy would be any of those high schoolers who run.
I think we're all aligned on the goal, right? Which
Right.
is we want to get this out there and get the value to the customers, and we want to make sure that they know that we've done it. I mean, that's why we grouped it as one big kind of item rather than spreading it out. So I think really great feedback. We appreciate this. We'll make sure we're pushing it out ahead of when we do it. We push it out while we do it. We can talk about it after we've done it. We'll really try to make sure that people hear about it. They know that SVC has done this for them, because it's a really great kind of trust relationship building opportunity for us here.
Okay, there's a youth climate summit this weekend, right?
SVCE.
Yeah, so we can announce this, right, at this, that we're, the SVCE,
It's public. I mean, here we are. It's a public meeting, so this information is public.
all right. We should try and announce this.
Fortunately, I will not be able to attend, but then I am registered. It's in Campbell. If no other question, we'll close this agenda item. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
Next, we go to recommend the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Board of Directors approve the fiscal year 2025 proposed operating budget and maintain current financial reserve targets and policies. There is staff report.
Yes, there is. You have the staff report in your package. And we'll go to the slide number 2. So this is our annual budget that we prepare, and I'll go through that timeline in the second page. So I'll talk about how it works in the timeline and scheme of things. In terms of the main areas of discussion, well, I should say this is an action item. We're asking that the committee recommend that the board approve the suggested changes and the proposed fiscal year 25-26, which we abbreviation will refer to as fiscal year 26 annual operating budget. In the main area, we'll go through the budget timeline, highlights, we'll compare the proposed budget for the upcoming fiscal year with the current fiscal year. We'll talk about revenue forecast, which is the biggest uncertainty, and we'll talk about the reserve and financial management of our reserves. We had an in-depth discussion, if you remember, from the last June board meeting. If there's something that I can say is good news, which actually also is bad news. The good news is even though the numbers are slightly different, but from an overall financial perspective, what we discussed at the last time is pretty much same in terms of base case, right? Last time we also discussed the stress case scenario, but we also updated the base case. You will see that the financial picture that we discussed last time is very similar, if not very, for the most part, same as what we had discussed. So remember all the discussion we had about risks, uncertainties, in particular certain market prices and the impact on our budget and our finances. All those uncertainties and all those discussions that we had basically sets us up for this presentation. So, and please feel free to bring any of the questions you may have had since that meeting. We'll go to the next slide. So this is the timeline. Again, at the last committee meeting, we discussed the budget framework as well as the stress test analysis that I just talked about. So in August is when we do a proposed budget. Per our policy, we submit a proposed budget to the board so that we can incorporate any feedback and changes the board has, and then bring in a final budget in September so that we have an approved budget before the start of our fiscal year, which would be October 1st, 2025, is when our new fiscal year will begin. And as always, we do an adjustment in December. I'll talk about that. And then we do a mid-year adjustment where we do a comprehensive adjustment of the full budget. Go to the next slide, slide 4. So these are the highlights. And as I alluded to earlier, a lot of these financial outlook picture is very similar to what we had discussed in the last meeting. When we look at next year, when we look at the 5-year outlook, the margins are negative. And the drivers for that has to do with the prices that are coming down, which now are increasing PCIA. Remember, this is a charge our customers pay to PG&E. And to remain competitive, we have to basically offset that in the rates that we offer to our customer. By lowering our rate to offset higher PCIA, means our revenues go down. So year over year, this driver is contributing to $165 million reduction in revenue for this upcoming fiscal year versus last fiscal year. And also not just PCIA, but PG&E rates also are projected to be coming down because of lower prices. As we mentioned last time, I'll touch on some of those uncertainties. The results are very uncertain, especially at this time of the year. They're very dependent on the market price benchmark that the CPUC will issue in October, around October 15th. And those prices are basically what gets used to compute PCIA and to some extent PG&E's generation rates. It is very difficult to forecast those, which we have attempted to do in this budget. But as we do in all the recent budgets we've submitted, we do an adjustment in December when we have more certainty on these metrics, so that we can incorporate them and have a better assessment of our financial outlook for the upcoming calendar year. And as I said, 5-year outlook, largely consistent with the results we had discussed at the June meeting. They were negative, driven by the same dynamics, market prices coming down. So for the same reasons we had discussed, point number 2 here in the box is we're recommending no major changes at this time. So the budget we're presenting is consistent with the discussion we had in June. Again, as I mentioned, we will adjust rates in December. It will go into effect in calendar year 2026. For 2025, there's 3 months of 2025 that fall in the new fiscal year. We are going to continue with the discounts and the bill credits we were giving to low-income customers at the same rate as for the current fiscal year. That again has to do with the fact that we time our rate changes when PG&E changes their rates in calendar year, basically in January of 2026. But the good thing is all the risk analysis we have done over time, and the reserves we have built prepare us for this kind of downturn in market, positions us well to withstand the negative projections we're projecting. So we have the reserves. We don't have to take any drastic measures at this point. So we can be strategic and measured in our approach that we take, very consistent with what we had discussed. So we have already started looking at financial levers. Obviously, if the financial picture continues like this for over the 5 years, it's not that we don't want to do anything, but we don't want to do anything drastic because as time rolls on, we'll have more and more certainty on the financial outlook, right? As we have more information. And also we want to take measured approaches, look at how we want to structure our product offerings, what impact it will have on our customers, in return, how much of a benefit would it have towards our financial picture. So we're doing all those analysis right now. We'll bring a first set of those analysis, target is to bring to the board in December into this committee. Our next meeting probably, if we follow last year's calendar, will be sometime in November. If need be, we can have it earlier. But around that next meeting is when we're thinking of bringing the financial numbers analysis, which actually I'm working very closely with Justin and essentially leading the analysis, because a lot of this will have the impact on our customers, direct impact on our customers as to what strategies we pursue. In terms of the discount that we've built into this budget that we're presenting, the proposed budget, as I mentioned, we want to continue the 4% for the 3 months that fall, 3 months of the new fiscal year that fall in this year, October 2025 to December 25, where we had budgeted 4% last year's budget or last fiscal year's budget, or which will end in September 30th. And this again has to do with the timing of rate changes. We want to time our rate changes with PG&E. But then in the proposed budget, we have for this budget we're presenting, we have some 1% starting January 2026, sorry. And we've continued with the low income bill credit. We take 1% of the discount that we would have given to all our customers, take that dollar amount, translate it into dollar bill credit, which for this year is $17.50 because of the high rates we have. But for next year, we're projecting it will drop to $12. So starting January 2026, we're projecting it will go to somewhere around $12. These are not final numbers. As I said, we will bring adjusted numbers budget in December, at which point we will have better numbers on what the PCIA will be. We won't know the final number. We'll have better projection of what PG&E's likely rates will be and the PCIA will be. And based on that, at that time, the board would actually decide what the discount should be or what the rates will be for our customers starting January 2026. And in terms of all other operating expenses, they are relatively minor. We're projecting no changes to our personnel or our headcount. We're not adding any new positions. We've accounted in the budget for 3% adjustment for cost of living using a Bay Area CPI. The slight increase in power supply expenses, 19 million, which is relatively small. This has to do with minor changes in portfolio position adjustments that happen from year to year, meeting new compliance targets, as well as some increases in the energy cost. A lot of the price decreases, energy prices have historically from the recent high levels have come down, but relative to last year, they're slightly up this year. The big drops in price is the resource adequacy prices and the RPS renewable energy credit prices. Those have come down drastically this year. So that's what's driving the PCIA lower and PG&E generates lower. PCIA higher, PG&E generates lower, and contributing to our erosion in our margin or headroom. All other expenses, relatively minor, $4 million increase, and this has to do with the new vendor. Some of these are reflecting rates that were negotiated for a new vendor agreement that have been approved by the board, as well as anticipated legal expenses and some cost as our bringing our PPAs online, and as well as the new scheduling coordinator that the board authorized us to use starting sometime this year. So that's the highlight. I'll go into a little bit of a detailed picture of the budget in slide 5. So this is a comparison to the current budget for fiscal year 24-25. You can see encircled there, the big story is the revenues for the reasons I talked about. The PCIA going up, PG&E gen rate coming down, us trying to keep our rates competitive. Like he said, next year at a 1% discount brings our revenues down, and I'll show this in an illustration in the next slide as well. You can see power supply expenses, as I said, relatively minor change. And all our other operating expenses, as I said, slight increase, 3.9 or 4 million, as I mentioned earlier. You'll see some big changes in the annual transfers and other expenses. They're not actually big changes. The Biggest difference there is the bill credit that Peyton just went over. This year, in the mid-year budget in March, the board, at the committee's recommendation, approved up to $35 million in bill credits. We have no such bill credits budgeted for the upcoming fiscal year for the reasons we talked about, and erosion of our margin. But also the one-time bill credit that we have been giving to our low-income customers listed there as FARA. Last fiscal year was 5.4 million. We're showing zero here, even though we have budgeted for it, but we've moved the bill credit from a transfer from a budget to a bill credit fund, but now we're accounting for it as a reduction in revenues. Because in reality, that's how our accounting is done. Because the bill credits we're giving to a customer as opposed to giving an outright discount, it really is a reduction in revenue. That's how our accounting treatment is. So this makes reconciliation with our actual accounting easier. But also more importantly, if you remember, Peyton talked about the rounding those 43.47 number. Now we don't have to do that because now we're not showing it as an expense, but more appropriately as a revenue item. So when we will go for rate change in December, let's say the number comes to be, I said, right now it's about $12. Let's say it comes to be 12.375. The board can say let's round it to 12.50 or let's round it to 15. It's up to the board's discretion. We as staff will make a recommendation that makes sense from an marketing perspective. So we don't have to deal with that. It also solves that problem. It also aligns with the revenues because these bill credits really are a form of rate, lower rates that we're giving to our customers. That's what the accounting is. And it's also a better way of keeping cost in a cost of service type of a framework environment that we're operating in. Okay. We'll go to the next slide. Well, I'll give more highlight on the 40% drop in our margins. So the margin, basically, our rate is the blue box. This chart should be very familiar now. We do it in every budget and it's about every presentation I make. The blue box times the load is our revenues, right? And what affects the blue box is basically staying below PG&E at a competitive rate, but accounting for the orange box, which is the PCIA that our customers pay to PG&E. Now with PG&E projected to be higher, again, we don't know these rates. We'll have more certainty when we bring the adjusted budget in December. And we'll know the final at the end of December after the board meeting when PG&E files the rates, but we should have good estimate by then. But right now the projection is the PG&E rates will be much lower, PCIA will be much higher, almost twice as high. Therefore reducing our margin for what we can charge our customers. And that is what's contributing to the $165 million reduction in revenue. All right, then we'll go to next talk about our reserves. This is very similar to what we discussed at the June meeting. At that time, we said the 5-year outlook projected drawing 70 million. Now we're saying 75 million. Slight increase, but from an overall financial picture, it's about the same as what we presented before. Going forward, this projection assumes we will continue with a general 1% discount relative to PG&E rates. We'll continue to fund our programs. And currently we have funds contributed towards a program of about 93 million and some funds to a building that amounts to about, all in all, about 105 million. We're projecting that over the 5-year period, we will draw down all these programs and all these earmarked funds to zero. So you look at the reserve picture, I've got in mind. Did I skip a slide? I did skip a slide.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. So sorry, let me go back to slide 6. This is a picture of the reserves. Very similar to, as I said, what I presented at the June meeting. Sorry, I'm on slide 6. Eleni.
Next one.
Next one. For my It's like to say 6. But I'm accessing from the same source. Okay, so here's the reserve projection. You can see we have 3 target levels, right? The red at 120 days. We don't want to ever fall below that. That's our minimum target. And the target in the blue is 350 days. And the upper target is at 500. We don't want the darker blue, which is after we've accounted for the, taken out the earmark funds. We want that to stay below the 500. But in terms of financial picture, really the lighter blue is at any given point in time, that's what our financials would reflect. We haven't spent the money, still have the money in our bank, for the earmark funds, mainly the programs fund, the 93 million that I talked about. So at the June presentation, the 5-year, we were ending at 153 days of cash. So we're slightly lower at 149 days of cash now. Now I'll go back to the next slide. 8 for you and 7 for me. So this is what I was talking about earlier. The 5-year outlook showing negative, as the previous slide showed, the reserves keeps falling down, because this assumes on an average we're pulling 75 million out of the reserves on a 1% discount. And I'm not saying that will be our strategy going forward. We'll bring the financial levels analysis in December. We'll have a more nuanced strategy going forward on discounting for customers. So overall, financially, we're well positioned because we have been building reserves, knowing that this could be a potential outcome, given the risk that we face as an entity. That's what the stress tests were designed for. And that positions us well, even if you remember the discussion in the last meeting, we talked about the next 2 years being the most critical because of the way the PCIA mechanism works, PG&E's balancing accounts work. If you look at the next 2 years, we're still close to our target of 350 days of cash, now projected to end at 345. So that puts us in a good range. So again, that reinforces that we don't have to take any drastic measures right now, but we got to be thoughtful, strategic, and very measured in the changes we make to our business. So for that reason, for this budget, as we had discussed last time, we're proposing no major changes. Again, we will come back in December. There's more certainty on our financial picture. At that time, we'll also bring back this financial levels analysis that I mentioned Justin's working on, and I'm working with him. And one of the things we may consider is increasing the financial liquidity by getting a bank line of credit. That doesn't necessarily enhance your financial picture because it's a debt you'd be taking, but in a short crunch, it could provide liquidity should we need it. That would, we'll probably do other things first before we go there. Yeah, I'll go to the next slide, which is review reserve targets and policy. So per our reserve policy and our practice, at this time, we recommend any changes to our reserve policy. Basically, one of the key inputs in the reserve policy is a stress test analysis that we went through in June. We basically stressed our business to see how we could withstand if such a stress condition were to occur. Financial picture is already projecting we are kind of in a stressful sort of a financial scenario. So for the reasons we discussed at the last time, we are not recommending any changes to the reserve policy. The methodology we have been using is based on the stress test analysis, design it such that if the stress test were to occur the next 2 years, our reserve doesn't fall below 120 days of cash on hand, the minimum target. And the upper maximum target, set it such that over a 5-year period, our reserves don't fall below 90 days of cash on hand. If I were to strictly follow those, the table there on the right shows what the implied targets will be. You can see the target is still very close to 350 days of cash on hand. The upper target would move much higher. That's because of the declining financial picture. But again, we don't just follow this one analysis and adjust reserve policies. There's other considerations. One of them being relevance of the stress test and And right now, we are in a stressful picture, so it's gonna naturally result in a higher number. The other input is the credit rating agencies, where they feel very comfortable with the 350 as a target. And also, from a practical standpoint, even if I were to change any of these targets, financial picture says there's no practical impact, because we are in a financial position of withdrawing from reserves, not adding to reserves. So for those reasons, we are saying we don't need to make any changes to our reserve policy. Okay. A little diversion of the chart here. That's why I have a different. Anyways, go to the next. Let's see what you have next. Okay. Operating expenses and transfer. This is a little more detail on the other expenses I talked about, the 4 million on the operating expenses. Personnel expenses, there are a lot of pluses and minuses. Some of the costs we have moved from one category to another to align with our accounting practices. But all in all, personnel expenses are not growing much. There is a 3% adjustment for COLA. We're not adding any headcounts. Other operating expenses slightly higher, again, for updated vendor management fees, budgeting for legal expenses that are anticipated, higher operating costs for PPAs coming online, and slight increases in marketing and G&A activity. You see a $500,000 increase for new office furniture. So office, we bought the building, as you know, back in February. The funding for that came from fiscal year 23-24 when the board had transferred 20 million. So that's basically what's funding the renovations and the purchase of the building. But ongoing expenses, day-to-day operational maintenance for the building, furniture costs, we are including in this budget, which are relatively minor. You can see the furniture cost of about $462,000 to be precise. Transfers, as we do with all our board approved policy, we transfer 2% of our revenues to our programs. This year, because our revenues are projected to be lower, our transfer is lower. 7.2 million. Okay. We'll go to the last slide, and when you see the waterfall slide, you know I've reached the conclusion. The mark to show that there are many risks, a lot more risk between now and December when we will have better projections of PCI and PG&E gen rates, at which point we will make adjustments to our revenue, and we'll then make a recommended for customer rates to be in effect starting 2026. So the current 4% again will continue for the 3 months of the new fiscal year that falls in this year, October 2025 to December 2024. This budget assumes 1%, but we will make the final decision at the December meeting as to what will be in effect for 2026 rates. Again, as I mentioned, we'll bring the financial levers analysis next time, but most likely the next time we'll meet. And we're recommending no changes to reserve policies. Okay. And that's about it.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee?
And I just have a note from Monica, I'll put it up there. The furniture expense, we're just gonna largely relabel that. We don't wanna be that precise because there could be some other expenses in there. We'll just label it as office. New office expense. Just to be clear. The budget we'll submit to the board, we'll make that change between now and posting and Friday's posting. So with that, I will take any questions. We'll take a committee vote on the recommendation to the board.
I know there was a lot of discussion about power rates, electricity rates for people in the legislature this year. It's a huge, so I wondered how those changes directly relate to our, or do they, to this budget? I mean, Or have we had a chance to figure that out?
So one reminder, there's a lot of discussions at the legislature. Some of that affects transmission and distribution aspect of the bill, which is PG&E, right? But ultimately, our customers pay, and obviously we care about that because that affects our mission. You know,
And doesn't it affect the
affordability of-
PCIA
But
indirectly?
PCIA is right now, we had talked a lot about the PCIA being changed at the CPUC. We talked about it last time. There's two track proceeding. Track one, the decision came out, which is how to set those market price benchmarks that I said the CPUC will issue in October 15th. There's a big impact on PCIA. So that decision came out. That decision was basically favorable in some terms, unfavorable in other terms. Basically, they are going back and adjusting the methodology used to set 2025 rates. As I remember there's a balancing account. So that balancing account basically will come and hit us this year. Because of the CPUC changing the methodology on the 2025 final MPV prices, rather than using prior methodology, the newer methodology would result in a basically higher PCIA than what was collected in rates from us. So that they will basically get to true up by charging us a higher PCIA in 2026. That's one of the reasons I said we will carefully watch 2 years of, we cannot bank one, if you remember one of the slides from last presentations, cannot bank 1 year's margin. For that very reason, because of these balancing accounts, even though you think you know the rates, you don't know the rates. The balancing account income, even though we're gonna have a very good year this year, but part of it is essentially giving it up next year. That's what's driving our negative margin. So that decision came out in towards the end of June, where basically they said they're going to look at these market price benchmarks over a longer term period, which basically takes away from the concept of how indicative these prices are of a market at a given point in time. So we think that it makes the methodology more less accurate going forward. But the fact that the prices have come down actually in the near term is helping us going forward. But this 2026 is having a big negative impact because of the balancing account. And going forward, if that methodology were to stay in place, it may be somewhat favorable. But again, that could be changed because there's track 2 decision. And that's where we're going to have a lot of debate, and that's going to take some time before the CPUC settles. Because what they did was a temporary fix. They said that, of the issues that PG&E raised last year in the PCIA. So the commission did a track 1 very quickly to come to a decision by June so that they could implement that methodology, the MPVs that they will issue in October 2025. Rate making for 2026 rates. But they said there are a lot more issues that needs to be taken into account, and it will take a longer time, and that's a track 2 proceeding, and we're very active in that proceeding. And we see that as a very critical proceeding for us that's going to affect our financial picture. A lot of that uncertainty is some of the uncertainty I talk about when you're looking at future rates, is how ultimately these MPVs will be settled. And we have a strong position that we are advocating for. Other CCAs have some other proposals, and we're trying to work those differences out at the Cal CCA right now. We make a proposal at that PUC. So that's one thing happening on the PCIA side. Then there are lots of other proceedings. There are a lot of other efforts that can affect rates that are pursued at the legislative level that you hear from Benner about. Again, some of that could be T&D, wildfire cost,
Right.
or securitization of some of those new transmission build-outs that can affect T&D, but again, it affects the overall affordability for our customers. But in terms of our budget, PG&E rates, PG&E generation rates, not the T&D and the PCIA have the biggest impact.
Okay, thank you. Because as elected officials, we have the ability to advocate where sometimes staff doesn't. And so it's important for us to know a little bit about where, if possible, that advocacy. And because of all the conversations with, you know, this summer over the costs and how to handle fire and all those things, I feel like it's probably a more fraught time for us to, you know, board members to step up than maybe it was in the past.
Absolutely, because those rates are still important, because TND, I think Justin shared this earlier in a presentation, in a study session. Those rates have gone up significantly, more than double in 5 weeks or so. Yeah, and that's driving our mission, that's driving affordability for our customers, because they only see the total bill, right? Yeah.
Right. And then the other question I had was about kind of the push-pull relationship of low income credits. Somebody has to apply for the low income credits. And I think I asked this before, but honestly, Cameron, I don't remember. How do people get informed that they're eligible for these discounts?
So traditionally, and in the past, customers have had to seek out the information on their own. So depending on the program, PG&E has income level thresholds that cite the qualifications. There's also a number of other public assistance programs that would, you know, grandfather them into their eligibility. Since having adopted affordability as a strategic focus area, SVCE itself has been making some strides in reaching out through the data that we have to actually inform these customers that they may be qualified and should take a look. We have some estimates that say there are certainly customers in the territory that are qualified for those discounts that aren't necessarily taking advantage. So we're in the process of reaching out to those folks proactively.
Well, that's great. And I would say one thing in Mountain View, we have a rent control program. And through that rent control program, we offer twice a month sessions in the library where people can come in and talk about rent issues. And one of the things that has come up in the last year is how to deal with power bills, particularly for multi-residents, because, you know, some places everybody has their own meter and other places they don't. And it's been this big issue in Mountain View in the last year. And I honestly don't know the specific details. Justin, you probably do because you're in a rent control department, are you? Yeah, but anyway, that might also be another methodology for getting the word out, at least in Mountain View. And I would think, you know, and then the other one particularly is CSA, and then we have CSA, Community Services Agency, and then you have
Sunnyvale Community Services.
Yeah.
West Valley.
Right.
Yeah, and as Pete said, I mean, fundamentally, right, so for our additional discount, we really pin it to the CareFera. So it's sort of like, hey, if you've already signed up on those, then like there's nothing else to get SVCs, like you're already getting it. And so as Peyton said, what we've really tried to do is do a lot more to push out information about CareFera, about, hey, you should enroll, we think you might be eligible. And so we are looking for those opportunities. So if you have connections at those orgs, we'd love to hear it. We'll add that to our kind of list of places where we're pushing this information about payment assistance plans that people can get on, about how to enroll on CareFera, all this kind of stuff that's part of our, this an active education campaign that we're running right now.
Okay, yeah, be glad to talk offline then about that.
I just wanted to highlight slide 19 in the appendix. You have some more information.
Yeah, I looked at that, and the income levels are pretty low.
Yeah.
And another way might be through our affordable housing, but the affordable housing folks are really savvy, so they probably already know about this.
10 household, 130K.
Yeah.
Any
Go
other
back to the
question?
recommendation slide.
I have a question. The rounding, you mentioned the rebate. Maximum, even if you round it up to the next dollar, it will be about 250K, right?
For every dollar, it
For
would be
every
two
dollar,
hundred and fifty-three K.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then you talked about the furniture, which is about $500,000 or something like that.
Office space expense.
Office space expenses, right? So, but the overall, our revenue has decreased. That's the biggest thing.
That's the main story,
right,
yeah.
Yeah.
And we've been talking
All
about it.
these things are nice in the sense that it's not a big change or anything, right? So
Revenues is the
revenue is the biggest.
99% of the story.
Yeah, exactly.
All the rest is edges.
Yeah, exactly. Penny on the dollar or something. Anyway, any more questions?
Just one question, about the revenues. Is that number going to be adjusted after you do your fourth quarter?
Yes, when we get the CPUC benchmarks, market price benchmarks, we talked about that, or the PCIA will change, PG&E's gen rates will change. So we'll have a better projection of PG&E's rates and PCIA when we bring the adjusted budget. And the adjusted budget, we will only change the revenues and power supply expenses. All these other operating expenses we don't touch. We'll do that in the mid-year. But the reason is because the big impact that those NPVs will have on our updated projections for 2026 rates and therefore our revenues. Again, just a caveat, we won't know the final rates until pretty much end of December, early January. But we generally, by using those numbers in our models, our consultants' models, we can generally guess reasonably close to what those rates will be. So the number.
And that'll change the amount of the revenue.
Yes, it will change the revenues, it will change the financial projections. So we will do an update when we come to the committee meeting, likely in November. Then take that recommendation to the board in December. And that's what we've been doing for the last at least 3 or so years.
So according to this chart, so PG&E rates will come down, slide 6. So when will that happen? In December or something like that?
Yeah, that's in December, late December is I think when the CPUC approves the rates. CPUC approves and PG&E has to file an advice letter. We will probably find out towards the end of, most likely in January is when we will find out the final rates. But we will make a projection, as I said, in November when the key input MPVs come out in mid-October. So if the PUC sticks to the time schedule, they change it 3 times. And then board will, based on that recommendation, adjust the rates. Should there be anything drastically different, we can obviously amend the budget, but we always have for our regular schedule, we always amend the budget in mid-year anyway, March.
So the question is, by December, consumers should see a decrease in
Yeah,
the bill.
The rates, yeah, it's a good story for
Good story for the customer.
A great story for the customer, yeah.
Exactly.
And that's,
It's almost 40% discount on the energy cost.
you know, the rates are going up 30%. If you account for the bill credit, the one Peyton went through the one-time bill credit,
33 million.
it's more like a 25% reduction maybe. Because our effective discount this year is 10%.
Right.
But remember the discussion we had, when the board and the committee recommended that bill credit was based on that. The rates going forward will be coming down. We have all these balancing objectives, one being affordability. That's why the bill credit is authorized for this year.
But we talk about this all the time internally, but it's just important to keep in mind, we're talking about the gen rate, right? Which there's the T&D part of the bill. So when we think about customer facing affordability, they're seeing that whole rate. They're seeing the T&D part as well. So it's looking forwards, we're seeing this gen side coming down, but I don't think the T&D is moving in that same
But
way.
even then, you will see some discount.
Yes, yep. but somewhat mute. It's not like the bills are gonna be 40% lower
40%
because
lower.
you've got the T&D portion that's twice as large basically on the bill.
Yeah, if you see the bill, what you showed, the PG&D rate is about $40 and then SVCE is about $90, so. Right. Yeah. Right. So I don't have any other questions. Any other questions from the committee? If not, we'll open for public comments. Is there any public?
No speakers on this item, Chair.
Okay, we'll close public comment and then can we have a motion and a second?
I recommend that the staff budget with let me rephrase it. I recommend that the SVCE Board of Directors approve the fiscal year 25-26 proposed operating budget and maintain the current level of reserves
Reserve policy.
Reserve policy.
Policy.
and policy.
We don't know the reserves.
Reserves will change.
Yeah,
Second.
thank you. Roll call, please.
Chair Srinivasan,
Yes, please.
Vice Chair Showalter,
Yes.
Alternate Director Mohan,
Yes.
Alternate Director Risto.
Aye.
Thank you, that motion carries.
Next is committee remarks. Any remarks? Probably SVC youth. Silicon Valley Clean Energy, not clean energy, sorry. Youth climate action
Oh, yes, I believe it's,
on August 9th, I think.
let me look at my calendar.
Yeah, I have it here if you don't have it.
It's a good opportunity to connect with kids and
I think SVC is a sponsor, right?
SVCE is a sponsor.
Yeah, it should be.
That's a huge venue. Last year it was, I would have said there were maybe 200 kids. It was in Cupertino. That Campbell Theater is really large, so.
Thank you. Any other staff, about staff remarks?
Thank you for your vote and your time.
Thank you. If not, we will adjourn at 11:34. Thank you.